The doors of the Beverly Hills Galleria slid open with a soft chime, letting in the afternoon light. Beyond the polished marble floors and scent of imported perfume, luxury gleamed from every corner, designer bags, silk gowns and diamonds displayed like stars behind glass. At the far end of the corridor stood Aurora Jewelers, its gold-lettered sign glimmering under a chandelier that looked like it belonged in heaven. People passed by, pausing to admire the window. Most of them didn't go in, the kind of place that made you check your reflection before you dared to enter. But one woman did. She wasn't like the others. Her name was Emma Williams, 68 years old. Her grey hair was tied back in a simple bun, her cardigan slightly faded from years of use, her shoes clean but worn. Her purse, the same one she'd used for over a decade, hung loosely on her shoulder. She didn't walk like a shopper. She walked like someone visiting a church. Slowly, reverently, she stopped just inside the doorway, eyes widening at the sight before her. The jewelry cases sparkled, the air smelled faintly of vanilla and cashmere, and soft music whispered from hidden speakers. For a moment, she just stood there, smiling to herself. "This is where my Luna's dream lives," she murmured. Behind the counter, two young women in matching black suits exchanged a quick glance. The first, Sophie, leaned close and whispered, "Did she just say Luna?" The second, Vanessa, smirked, "Probably thinks she knows the owner, happens all the time." Emma approached the nearest case, where a diamond necklace rested on black velvet. It shimmered like sunlight on water. "Beautiful," she said softly, "just beautiful." Vanessa straightened her blazer, plastering on a professional smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you find something within your budget?" Emma blinked. "Oh, I'm not here to buy anything. I was just looking," Vanessa finished. Her voice dipped in sugar. "Of course. Maybe the department store next door would have something more practical." Sophie snorted quietly behind her hand. Emma's eyes softened. Not from offense, but from understanding. She'd seen pride before. It just wore better clothes now. She smiled gently. "Thank you, dear. I'm sure they have lovely things too." Vanessa turned away, rolling her eyes. "She's probably lost," she muttered. Another employee nearby chuckled, adding, "Maybe she's here to apply for cleaning work." The laughter was soft, but sharp enough to cut through the music. Emma didn't flinch. She simply walked to another display, a case filled with engagement rings. She leaned closer, her reflection blending with the glow of the gems. "I used to tell my daughter," she whispered to herself, "that one day she'd shine brighter than all of these." Her voice trembled slightly, not from sadness, but from awe. Behind her, Sophie whispered again, "Does she even know how expensive this stuff is?" Vanessa shrugged. "People like her never do. Look at those shoes." Emma turned, catching their reflection in the glass. Instead of anger, there was kindness in her eyes, the kind that makes the guilty feel seen. She said softly, "These are lovely young ladies working here. You must be proud of your store." The sarcasm went over their heads. Vanessa smiled tightly. "Oh, it's not our store, Mom. It belongs to someone far above our pay grade." Emma nodded. "Ah, yes, I know." She began to walk slowly around the boutique, taking in every detail, the soft glow of the lighting, the polished marble, the logo engraved on each tag. The name Aurora made her chest tighten. She remembered when that name had only existed as an idea, whispered across kitchen tables, written on napkins, prayed over before bedtime. Now it stood here, shining in gold. Emma whispered again, "You did it, baby girl." She reached for her purse, pulling out an old handkerchief embroidered with tiny flowers. Her hands shook slightly as she wiped away a tear. Vanessa sighed impatiently. "Mom, please don't touch the glass. It leaves fingerprints." Emma froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I didn't mean to trouble you." "It's fine. Vanessa said, tone anything but fine. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at our sister store. They have more accessible items. Emma tilted her head gently. Accessible? Vanessa shrugged. Affordable. The word hung heavy in the air. For a second, Emma just looked at her. Really looked. Not in anger, not in pride, just a quiet, almost maternal sorrow. Then she said softly, affordable doesn't always mean cheap, dear, and expensive doesn't always mean valuable. Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. Emma smiled again and walked away. In the far corner, near the private office door, stood a small glass display, the Founders Collection. A plaque read, "Designed by Luna Williams, inspired by her mother's strength." Emma read the words slowly. Then she smiled, her eyes filling again. The necklace inside was shaped like a sunrise, a golden arc with diamonds that looked like tiny rays of light. She whispered, "You named it after me." Her voice broke softly. Behind her, Sophie noticed the tear and whispered to another clerk, "Okay, now she's crying. Someone get her out before she scares customers." Emma heard it. She didn't respond. She simply stood there, hands folded in front of her, praying silently, "Lord, thank you for bringing her this far, and please forgive those who can't see what you've done." Her lips trembled slightly as she prayed, the light of the necklace reflecting in her tears. Vanessa approached again, clearing her throat. "Ma'am, we do have policies about loitering. If you're not making a purchase, I might have to ask you to—" She didn't finish. A quiet ding sounded from upstairs, the elevator doors opening on the second floor. Someone was coming down. The employees straightened instantly, fixing their hair, adjusting their posture. "Who's that?" Sophie whispered. Vanessa's eyes widened. "It's Luna. Miss Williams is here." The tone in her voice changed from arrogance to panic. Emma turned slowly toward the sound. Her eyes softened again, because she knew that voice anywhere. Footsteps echoed as Luna Williams, now 34, descended the marble steps, calm, graceful, confident. Her gaze swept across the store, catching the tremor in her staff's smiles. She walked past them without a word, her heels clicking softly against the floor. When her eyes found Emma standing near the Founders Collection, time seemed to pause. "Mom," she said quietly. The word broke the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Every head turned. Every smirk disappeared. Vanessa's face went pale. Sophie's mouth fell open. Emma smiled through tears. "Hello, my darling. I was just looking." Luna's eyes softened, warmth, pride, and heartbreak blending into one expression. "I know," she said, "and I saw." The saleswomen froze, realization dawning. The woman they mocked wasn't just another customer. She was the mother of their boss. And heaven help them, she had heard everything. For a long moment, no one in the boutique moved. The air felt heavy, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Luna stood there, eyes locked on her mother, the room spinning slowly around them. She didn't speak right away. She didn't have to. Her presence alone carried quiet authority. Emma wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her tears. "Oh, honey, I didn't mean to disturb anyone," she said softly. "I was just curious to see how far God brought you." Her words were gentle, but they cut deeper than anger ever could. The saleswomen stood frozen, guilt crawling across their faces like a shadow. Vanessa tried to recover, forcing a trembling smile. "Miss Williams, we had no idea this lovely woman was—" Luna raised a hand. "Stop!" Her tone wasn't harsh, but it silenced the room instantly. "I don't want to hear excuses," she said quietly. "I just want to understand how kindness became such a rare luxury here." The words echoed like a sermon. Emma took a step toward her daughter, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, don't be upset. They didn't know. It's all right. Luna looked at her mother. Really looked. At the cardigan with a missing button, the old shoes polished by care, the small purse clutched like an anchor. Every thread told a story. Every wrinkle carried a prayer. And then she smiled softly, shaking her head. "Mom," she whispered, "you still defend people who hurt you." Emma smiled back, eyes full of peace. "That's how we keep our hearts clean, my love. Anger only leaves stains." The moment was tender and uncomfortable for everyone watching. It wasn't just a reunion, it was a mirror. Every person in that room saw themselves reflected in the grace of a woman they had mocked. Luna turned to the staff again, her expression calm but unyielding. "I'll speak with you later," she said. "For now, please give us some privacy." The saleswomen nodded quickly, retreating to the back of the boutique. Luna led her mother to a quiet corner with a velvet bench beneath a crystal chandelier. The contrast between Emma's modest presence and the lavish surroundings was almost poetic. She sat beside her and took her hand. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Emma chuckled softly. "Because you'd have said no. You're always so busy. I didn't want to be in the way." Luna sighed. "You could never be in the way, Mom." Emma looked around, her eyes glowing with pride. "I still can't believe this is yours. It's like walking into a dream. Do you remember when you used to sketch jewelry designs on napkins after your shifts?" Luna smiled faintly. "I remember you collecting the napkins before the restaurant manager could throw them away." Emma laughed quietly. "I just knew you'd make something beautiful one day. You always did. Even with nothing." Her laughter faded into silence, and for a moment they both sat quietly, watching the light dance off the diamonds. Meanwhile, in the back room, the sales staff whispered nervously. "I didn't know she was her mother," Sophie hissed. "You didn't ask?" Vanessa shot back. "She looked poor. I just assumed—" "Yeah," Vanessa interrupted bitterly. "We all did." Their words trailed off as the guilt settled in. They could still hear faint echoes of the mother and daughter talking near the front. Not scolding, not angry, just human. It was worse than shouting. Back on the bench, Luna turned to her mother again. "You always told me that humility was a kind of armor," she said. "That it protected us from pride. How do you keep it so strong?" Emma's eyes softened. "Because pride is heavy, Luna. It slows you down. Humility lets you move freely. It reminds you where your blessings come from." Luna nodded slowly. "And what about when people mistake humility for weakness?" Emma looked at her with that same calm smile she had carried all her life. "Then you let them. Because the truth doesn't need defending. It just needs living." Her words carried the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades learning them. Luna lowered her gaze, realizing how much of her own strength came from that same source, the still, unshakable faith that had guided their lives when nothing else made sense. "Mom," she said softly, "do you ever miss those years?" Emma tilted her head. "The hard ones." Luna nodded. Emma smiled faintly. "Sometimes. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and faith makes even the smallest home feel like a palace." Her words hung in the air like music, warm, familiar, true. The moment was interrupted by a timid voice. "Ms. Williams!" Vanessa stood near the doorway, wringing her hands. Her face was pale. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Emma stood before she could finish, placing a hand gently on her arm. "I forgive you, dear." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that." Emma smiled kindly. "None of us do. That's what makes it a gift." Vanessa looked down, ashamed, and whispered, "You remind me of my grandmother. She used to talk like that. I stopped listening after she passed." Emma squeezed her hand. Then maybe today was God's way of reminding you. Vanessa nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm really sorry, Mom. Emma brushed her hand across the young woman's cheek, like a mother would. I know you are. Just promise me you'll be kind, not just here, but everywhere. Vanessa nodded, trembling. I will. She turned, wiping her face, and hurried to the back. Luna stood watching, her throat tight. You just forgave her like that. Emma smiled softly. If God forgives me every morning, why would I wait until tomorrow to do the same? Luna shook her head slowly, smiling through tears. You're unbelievable. Emma chuckled. No, dear, just loved. A few minutes later, they walked slowly around the boutique together. Emma admired the pieces, touching nothing, just observing. Her humility filled the space more completely than any display. Every time she smiled, the atmosphere softened. Even the customers seemed quieter, more gentle, as if the presence of Grace had changed the air itself. Luna felt it too. She saw her store through new eyes, not as a symbol of achievement, but as an altar of gratitude. She looked at her mother and said quietly, You know, I built this place because I wanted to prove I belonged in the same world that once ignored us. But watching you here, I realize you were never outside of it. You were above it all along. Emma smiled faintly, placing her hand over Luna's heart. The world didn't make us, Luna. God did, and he doesn't make mistakes. They left the boutique hand in hand. The sales staff stood in silence, watching them go. Vanessa turned to Sophie and whispered, I've worked here 5 years, and I've never seen the store feel like that. Sophie nodded quietly. I think that's what real luxury is. Outside, the evening sunlight turned the glass storefront to gold. Emma paused for a moment, looking back through the window. The reflection of her and her daughter shimmered together in the glass. One humble, one successful, yet both equal in spirit. She whispered softly, Thank you, Lord, for letting her shine without losing her light. The breeze carried her words away as they walked into the sunset, their silhouettes fading against the glow, mother and daughter, grace and glory, humility and success, walking side by side. The past has a sound. Sometimes it's the creak of an old floorboard, the hum of a washing machine, or the echo of a hymn sung softly in another room. For Luna Williams, her past sounded like the rhythm of her mother's work, the swish of a mop, the clink of porcelain, and the soft whisper of prayer between every chore. 28 years earlier, a modest home in Palo Alto, California, on the edge of where the rich hills began to climb. It wasn't much, 2 rooms, a tiny porch, and a garden full of marigolds that Emma tended before sunrise. Every morning, she woke up before the world did. By 5 o'clock, the kettle was boiling. By 6, she was already walking uphill toward the Harper residence, the house where she worked. The Harpers were kind, educated, wealthy. Their mansion sat like a jewel among trees, glass walls reflecting the California sky. Inside, everything smelled of cedar and lemon. And while the world saw Emma as the help, the Harpers' children saw something different. They saw the woman who sang while she cleaned, the woman who fixed their toys with patience, and who, no matter how tired, always smiled. But no one watched her closer than her daughter, Luna. At 7 years old, Luna was quiet, thoughtful, a mirror of her mother's gentleness. Every Saturday she waited outside the Harpers' study room, peeking in as their kids worked with private tutors. She listened to lessons she wasn't supposed to hear, math, history, words that felt like magic spells. And every time Emma caught her listening, she didn't scold her. She smiled and said, If you're going to eavesdrop, baby, make sure it's on something that makes you wiser. Evenings in their small home were sacred. After dinner, rice, beans, maybe some soup, Emma would light a candle, open her Bible, and read aloud. Sometimes Luna didn't understand the words, but she understood the peace in her mother's voice. It was calm, unwavering, like a river that had learned how to flow even through rocks. "Mom," she'd ask, "why do you pray every night?" Emma would smile. "Because prayer is like breathing, baby. You can survive without food for days, but not without air." Then she'd tuck her in, whispering a verse from Psalms or Proverbs before turning out the light. Luna didn't know it then, but those verses would become her armor in the years to come. One particular summer afternoon stood out in her memory like a painting. The Harpers' children were outside by the pool with their tutor, practicing arithmetic with popsicles in hand. Luna sat on the porch steps, holding her mother's notebook, an old spiral filled with grocery lists and small notes. On the back page, in neat handwriting, Emma had written a prayer. "Lord, I have little, but I give you what I have. Bless my hands, and bless my child's mind. Let her learn what I never could." Luna traced the letters with her finger. She didn't fully understand, but she felt it, the weight of hope pressed into every word. That same day, when Emma came out carrying laundry, she found Luna sitting with the Harpers' kids, quietly following along with their math lesson. The tutor paused, amused. "She's quick," he said. "How old are you, dear?" "7, Luna answered. He smiled. "And you already know your fractions?" She nodded. "Mama taught me. She says life's full of halves and wholes. You have to know how to make things complete." The man chuckled softly, impressed. Emma's face glowed with pride, a pride too deep for words. Later that evening, she pulled Luna close. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "don't ever feel small around people who have more than you. God gives everyone a gift. Some people just forget to unwrap theirs." Luna nodded solemnly. "Then I'll unwrap mine." Emma smiled. "That's my girl." Years passed, and life grew heavier. Emma's husband, Luna's father, had passed away when she was just a baby. There were no grandparents, no siblings, no safety net, only work, faith, and each other. Sometimes money ran out before the month did. Sometimes Emma skipped meals so Luna could eat, and sometimes, when the bills piled up, she'd whisper in prayer, "Lord, if you keep me standing, I'll keep believing." Luna saw all of it, the exhaustion, the faith, the quiet strength. It didn't make her bitter, it made her determined. At 12, she started helping after school, organizing books at the library, cleaning tables at a cafe. At night, she'd study by candlelight while her mother mended uniforms or folded laundry, and every so often, Emma would look up from her sewing and say, "You're going to make it, Luna. Not because of luck, but because of love." When Luna turned 15, something happened that changed everything. One evening, while cleaning the Harpers' dining room, Emma overheard a conversation between Mr. Harper and a visiting professor from Stanford. They were discussing a new scholarship program for underprivileged students, a fully funded academic initiative for promising young minds. Emma's heart started pounding. She finished polishing the table and, with trembling hands, knocked softly on the study door. "Excuse me, Mr. Harper," she said timidly. "I couldn't help overhearing. You mentioned a scholarship." The professor looked up, curious. "Yes, it's competitive, but it's open to anyone who meets the academic criteria." Emma smiled faintly. "I know someone who will." That night, she came home carrying a brochure and eyes full of fire. She placed it in front of Luna on their small kitchen table. "Stanford," she said, almost whispering the word like a prayer. Luna blinked. "That's where the Harpers' kids want to go." Emma nodded. "Then so will you." Luna laughed nervously. "Mama, that's impossible." Emma's voice grew firm. "Impossible is just something people say when they stop believing in miracles." She took her daughter's hands and said, "You will study there, and when you do, you'll remember that it wasn't wealth that got you in. It was work, And it was Grace. Tears filled Luna's eyes. "But what if I fail?" Emma smiled gently. "Then you'll fail trying, and trying is still faith in motion." The years that followed were hard. Every morning, Emma left before sunrise. Every night, Luna stayed up studying, textbooks borrowed, notebooks reused. And through every setback, every test failed, every exhaustion, every tear, Emma's voice stayed constant. Pray first, then try again. By 17, Luna was ranked among the top students in her district. Her essay for the Stanford Scholarship was titled Grace in Work Clothes. It began with a single line: "My mother doesn't wear diamonds, but her hands shine brighter than any jewel I've seen." When the acceptance letter arrived, Emma opened it slowly, as if afraid the words might vanish. "Congratulations," it read. Luna had earned a full scholarship, tuition, housing, everything. Emma sat down at the kitchen table and wept, not from surprise, but from gratitude. She pressed the letter to her chest and whispered, "You heard me, Lord. You really heard me." Luna hugged her tightly, crying too. "Mom, we did it." Emma smiled through tears. "No, baby. You did it. I just kept the floor clean so your path would stay clear." That night, they prayed together. The candle flickered between them, casting gold across their faces. Emma's prayer was simple. "Lord, let her learn everything I never could. Let her remember you when she's at the top, and when people forget where she came from, let her kindness remind them." Outside, the wind rustled through the marigolds. Inside, faith bloomed quietly, like a seed that didn't need sunlight, only love. Stanford University, 2009. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of rain and coffee from nearby cafes. Students hurried across the courtyard, books clutched to their chests, laughter echoing between ivy-covered walls. Among them walked Luna Williams, a girl who still couldn't believe she was there. Her shoes were worn, her backpack second-hand, but her heart was full. She'd made it. Every scholarship letter, every late-night prayer, every tear her mother shed over unpaid bills. It had all led here. Still, as she walked past crowds of students wearing brand-new clothes and wireless earbuds, she felt a quiet distance. She didn't come from this world, but she wasn't afraid of it either. Luna lived in the dorms, worked at the campus library, and studied like her life depended on it, because in a way it did. Her mother's faith had built the bridge. Now it was her turn to cross it. Each morning began the same. A text from Emma. "Good morning, my sunshine. Remember who you are and whose you are." And each night ended the same. Luna's reply. "Good night, Mom. I'm studying hard. I love you." They were simple messages, but they held the weight of worlds. The first semester was brutal. The classes were faster, harder, full of students who had tutors, private lessons, and generations of privilege. Luna had faith and a part-time job at a cafe. She poured lattes by morning, attended lectures by day, and studied until midnight in the library. Sometimes she fell asleep on the books, her hands still holding a pen. The library lights hummed overhead, and she'd whisper, half asleep, "God, please keep me awake. I can't afford to fail." And somehow she didn't. Her professors began to notice. "Miss Williams," one said after class, "you have a sharp mind. Where did you go to prep school?" Luna smiled faintly. "I didn't. My mom taught me how to study." The professor frowned, confused. "Your mom?" "Yes," she said simply. "She was a housekeeper. But she cleaned up more than floors. She cleaned up excuses." The man blinked, unsure whether to respond. But he never forgot that line. Back home in Palo Alto, Emma followed her daughter's progress through letters and phone calls. She didn't understand half the technical words Luna used, but she understood the emotion behind them, the joy, the exhaustion, the hunger for something bigger. Sometimes Emma would sit at the dinner table alone, holding the phone after a call ended, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, you're doing exactly what you promised." On her breaks at the Harper home, she would tell the family about Luna, her grades, her hard work, her scholarship awards. The Harpers listened with real pride. "She's extraordinary," Mrs. Harper said once. Emma smiled. "No, Mum, she's obedient. God made her extraordinary." By her third year at Stanford, Luna's potential had become undeniable. She was invited to intern at a small tech startup in San Francisco, unpaid, of course. She accepted without hesitation, even though it meant working nights at a fast food restaurant to cover what the scholarship didn't. Her days started at dawn and ended past midnight. Some nights she cried quietly in the bus on her way home, clutching her notebook like it was her lifeline. But every time she wanted to give up, she heard her mother's voice in her head. "Work with your hands, but let your heart belong to God." So she kept going. During those years, Luna rarely went home. Travel was expensive, and she didn't want to burden her mother. Instead, they talked on video calls every Sunday. "Look at you," Emma would say, laughing softly. "You're getting thinner." "I'm getting smarter," Luna replied. Emma chuckled. "Just don't lose both." Then she'd hold up a plate of food toward the camera. "I made your favorite, rice and beans with roasted plantains." Luna smiled, eyes wet. "Stop it, Mom. You're making me hungry." "You're making me proud," Emma said softly. They'd end every call the same way. Emma would lift her hand toward the screen and pray aloud. "Lord, bless her mind, steady her spirit, and remind her that no degree shines brighter than faith." By graduation day, Luna had become one of Stanford's top students. She was chosen to deliver a speech at the ceremony, the first in her family to ever stand on such a stage. As she stepped to the podium in her red robe, she spotted Emma sitting near the back, hands clasped, eyes full of tears, smiling like she'd just seen a miracle. The crowd quieted as Luna began to speak. "My mother once told me that God answers prayers in ways we don't expect. She prayed for a better life for me, and instead of sending miracles, he sent her." Gasps and applause filled the air. Emma lowered her head, overcome. "She worked for families who had everything, but she gave me something money can't buy, the belief that humility is not weakness and service is not shame. Today, I graduate because she cleaned the floors I walked on, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure her name is never forgotten." The applause became thunder. Emma cried openly, whispering through her tears, "All glory to you, Lord." After graduation, Luna took her first job at a private investment bank. She hated it. The money was good, but the people, cold. Her co-workers measured worth by watches and cars. She smiled politely and prayed quietly. When one colleague mocked her background, she simply said, "I grew up cleaning homes. It taught me how to see the dirt in people without judging them." That silence at the table was worth more than any paycheck. She left the bank after 2 years, trading prestige for passion. She joined a startup that developed wearable technology, small, elegant devices that tracked health and emotion. She thrived there, blending creativity and intelligence, making design beautiful and meaningful. That's where the spark began. She realized that beauty and purpose could coexist, that luxury didn't have to mean arrogance. One night, while talking to her mother on the phone, Luna said, "Mom, do you remember when you used to save broken jewelry from the Harper's house?" Emma chuckled. "Oh, yes. I used to fix them with glue and prayer." Luna smiled. "I think I want to build something like that. Something beautiful that doesn't need to be perfect to be valuable." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Then make it, sweetheart. But remember, if you build with pride, it'll crumble. If you build with purpose, it'll last." Luna nodded. then purpose it is. That night, Luna stayed up sketching designs in her notebook, bracelets that symbolized family, necklaces that resembled prayer circles, rings engraved with words like faith, grace, home. She called her collection Aurora, meaning new dawn. The name came from something her mother had once told her when she was a child. Even the darkest night ends with light. That's how God works, quietly, faithfully, like a sunrise. Luna drew until the morning light touched her desk. Then she whispered to herself, "All right, Lord, you gave her the prayer, now give me the hands." And so began the dream, not hers alone, but theirs. Months later, she resigned from her job, cashed out her savings, and started Aurora Jewelers in a rented co-working studio in San Francisco. She was 27, broke and fearless. Her first investor was the Harper family, Mrs. Harper hugged her and said, "Emma always said you'd change the world." Her second investor was a local church friend who simply told her, "If God's in it, I'm in it." Emma still worked part-time as a housekeeper, sending Luna encouraging notes written on grocery receipts. "Keep polishing your ideas like I polish silver until they shine." The business grew slowly, one sale at a time, one prayer at a time. Luna lived frugally, reinvesting every dollar. She designed her jewelry to reflect meaning, not status. One ad read, "Aurora, because beauty should remind you of blessings." And it worked. Within 5 years, Aurora Jewelers became one of the most sought-after ethical luxury brands in America. But Luna never forgot the seed that started it all, a prayer whispered by a tired woman kneeling on a cold kitchen floor. One evening, years later, Emma received a box in the mail. Inside was a golden pendant in the shape of a sunrise, with a note that read, "To the woman who taught me what light looks like." Emma held it to her chest, tears falling on the metal. She whispered, "Lord, you let her dream, and somehow you let me live it." San Francisco, 2017. The city lights shimmered over the bay like scattered gold. Inside a small studio downtown, Luna Williams sat at a wooden desk, surrounded by sketches, tools, and half-finished jewelry pieces. The window was open, letting in the noise of traffic and dreams. That room didn't look like a future empire. It looked like a prayer in progress. The brand name was taped to the wall in handwritten letters, Aurora Jewelers. Under it, a quote she had written from memory. "Even the darkest night ends with light." Her mother's words. The first months were brutal. Rent was high, savings low, and sleep almost non-existent. Luna spent her mornings designing, her afternoons meeting potential investors, and her nights packaging orders by hand. There were days she didn't sell a thing. When fear crept in, she'd stop, close her eyes, and whisper, "God, you didn't bring me this far to abandon me now." Then she'd get back to work. She refused to build just another luxury brand. She wanted something different, something sacred. Her jewelry would stand for meaning, not money. Each piece would carry a message, small reminders of grace, carved into gold. The first collection had names like faith, mercy, forgive, and home. It was elegant, minimal, timeless, and it spoke to people. Orders started trickling in, not because of ads or marketing, but because every customer felt seen. They weren't just buying beauty, they were buying belonging. But growth came slow. One night, Luna sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, bills, and exhaustion. She opened her laptop and checked her account balance, $127.54. That was all. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Lord, you're the CEO here. If you want this to live, breathe into it. I can't do this alone." A few hours later, an email arrived. It was from a Christian influencer who had seen one of her designs online. She wanted to feature Aurora in her blog, free of charge. That post changed everything. Within a week, sales tripled. Within a month, Aurora's small website crashed from traffic. Luna had to hire 2 part-time assistants. She smiled through tears, whispering the same prayer every night. "Thank you, God. I'll keep working while you keep blessing." By 2018, Aurora Jewelers had moved into a small showroom in downtown San Francisco. Sunlight filled the room each morning, landing perfectly on the glass displays. Emma visited often, always carrying food and advice. She'd sit on the couch, watching her daughter sketch new designs, and say, "You still draw like that little girl with napkins." Luna laughed. "And you still worry like that same mum." Emma smiled. "That's my job." They'd pray together before opening hours. Their prayer was simple. "Lord, let whoever walks through these doors feel seen, not sold." The next 2 years were a blur of hard work and blessings. Aurora Jewelers became a name people trusted. Celebrities wore it. Churches invited Luna to speak about purpose in business. Magazines called her the girl who brought soul to luxury. But Luna always said the same thing when interviewed. "My business didn't start with gold. It started with gratitude." In 2020, the company expanded into Los Angeles. The Beverly Hills boutique became their flagship store, the one that would later witness the story of grace and humility. But back then, it was just a dream made real. The opening day felt surreal. Photographers, investors, and guests filled the marble floors. The Harpers were there too, standing proudly beside Emma. When Luna took the microphone, she looked at her mother first. "This company is built on one woman's hands," she said. "Hands that cleaned, cooked, prayed, and believed before anyone else did." Emma smiled, tears in her eyes. "If you see beauty in this room," Luna continued, "remember, it began in humility. My mother taught me that faith polishes the soul better than gold polishes jewelry." Applause filled the room. Emma bowed her head, whispering, "Thank you, Lord. You did it again." Success followed. Aurora expanded into New York, Chicago, and Dallas. Its stores became sanctuaries of elegance and peace. Even the employees noticed something different. Every morning, Luna gathered her team and said, "Sell with heart, not hurry. Every client is a story, not a sale." People laughed at first, until they saw how customers kept coming back, not for discounts, but for dignity. But even success brings storms. In 2021, a supply chain collapse hit the jewelry industry hard. Prices soared, shipments failed, and competitors closed. Aurora Jewelers stood at a crossroads. Luna had 2 options: cut corners to survive, or hold her standards and risk collapse. She chose the second. Her accountant warned her, "If we don't lower quality, we'll lose millions." Luna answered quietly, "If I lose money but keep integrity, I win." The accountant stared at her, speechless. A month later, a major investor offered to buy Aurora, to save the brand. They wanted 60% control and suggested rebranding the message to sound less spiritual. Luna smiled politely. "I appreciate the offer, but this brand was born from faith, not fear. I'd rather close the doors than sell its soul." She walked away from the deal, and within weeks, something unexpected happened. A viral video, a celebrity pastor wearing Aurora jewelry, reignited public interest. Orders poured in again. Luna's courage had preserved the brand's identity and somehow strengthened it. Emma followed everything from home, watching interviews on TV and saving magazine covers in a shoebox. But she never once boasted. When people asked about her daughter, she simply said, "She's doing well, but I'm more proud of her heart than her success." Her faith remained quiet and consistent. She still worked part-time at a local family's house, even though Luna insisted she didn't have to. "I like being useful," Emma said. "If God lets me serve, I'll serve." Every Christmas, Luna and Emma hosted a dinner for Aurora employees. It wasn't glamorous, just food, laughter, and stories. At one of those dinners, Luna stood and raised her glass. She said, "You all see me as the founder, but I'm not. I'm just the messenger. The real founder is my mother, and the CEO is above both of us." Everyone laughed and clapped, but Emma only smiled and said softly, "I'm just the janitor who prayed." Luna shook her head. "No, Mum. You're the architect of everything that matters." The following year brought new challenges, fame, partnerships, and endless responsibilities. Luna's schedule grew impossible. TV appearances, interviews, travel, expansion plans. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she called her mother. Emma always answered with the same calm tone. "Take a deep breath, honey. God doesn't rush his masterpieces." Luna would laugh. "You should be the one giving TED Talks." Emma smiled. "I'm fine just talking to you." By 2023, Aurora Jewelers had become a multi-million-dollar brand with over 200 employees and boutiques across America. Yet Luna's favorite place was still that small studio where it all began. She kept it exactly as it was. Same desk, same quote on the wall, same chair her mother once sat in. Sometimes she'd go there alone at night, light a candle, and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for trusting me with her dream." On one of those nights, Luna scrolled through her security camera feed, watching the Beverly Hills boutique in real time. It was quiet. The staff was cleaning up after closing hours. She smiled, feeling grateful for how far they'd come. She closed her laptop and whispered she'd be proud. She didn't know that just days later, that same screen would show her something she'd never forget. Something that would remind her that even in success, God still tests the heart. A test that would happen not in a boardroom or a business meeting, but right there, in the very boutique that bore her mother's name in every corner. The morning sun spilled across Los Angeles like honey, bright and careless. Inside the Beverly Hills Galleria, the glass storefronts glimmered in perfect order, a temple of wealth, where people worshipped the illusion of perfection. At the far end of the marble corridor stood Aurora Jewelers, the pride of the Strip. Gold letters shined over tall glass doors. Inside, the chandeliers sparkled like captured stars. It was a Friday morning. The boutique had just opened. Behind the counter, two saleswomen, Vanessa and Sophie, arranged displays and discussed the day's appointments. Their voices were light, casual, unaware that the lesson of a lifetime was only minutes away. At 10:14 a.m., the doors opened. A soft chime rang, and an elderly woman stepped inside. Her name was Emma Williams. She wore a long beige skirt, a faded sweater, and a pair of shoes polished so carefully they almost shined. Her silver hair was tied back neatly, her eyes bright with quiet curiosity. She didn't look like a customer. She looked like someone visiting a memory. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her purse. It was old, but cared for, like everything she owned. She stopped just inside the doorway, gazing at the luminous displays. Every glass case reflected the light across her face. It looked like the room itself bowed to her presence, though no one else noticed. Sophie approached first, rehearsed smile in place. "Good morning, Ma'am. Can I help you find something special?" Emma smiled kindly. "I'm not sure yet, dear. I just wanted to see this store. I've heard wonderful things." Vanessa joined her, eyeing the cardigan and worn purse. Her tone turned light but condescending. "Of course, we have several items that are a little more affordable in our lower collection." Emma chuckled softly. "Affordable is always good. But I'm mostly here to look." Sophie leaned slightly toward Vanessa, whispering, "She's sweet. Maybe she's someone's grandmother waiting for a pickup." Vanessa smirked. "Or maybe she wandered in by mistake." Their laughter was quiet, polite, but sharp. Emma didn't react. She simply moved toward a display of gold bracelets. Her reflection appeared between the glass and the jewels, the hands that once scrubbed floors now hovering inches from gold. "They're beautiful," she said softly. Sophie crossed her arms. "Those are from our exclusive line, ma'am, designed personally by Ms. Luna Williams." Emma smiled. "I know." She read the small nameplate beside the bracelet, Aurora Sunrise Collection. A tear gathered in her eye, though she blinked it away before anyone could see. She whispered, "You always loved the sunrise, didn't you, baby?" Vanessa raised a brow. "Excuse me?" Emma shook her head. "Nothing, dear. Just talking to myself." Sophie forced a laugh. "Oh, that's okay. We all do that sometimes." They watched as Emma slowly made her way around the room, touching nothing, admiring everything. Her presence was gentle, like a hymn whispered in a place that had forgotten how to listen. "Would you like to try something on?" Vanessa offered, her tone falsely cheerful. "Maybe this one. It's from our signature line, though it might be a little heavy for everyday use." Emma smiled. "Heavy jewelry isn't the only kind that makes you feel rich." Vanessa frowned slightly, unsure if it was a joke. "Well, of course." Emma turned her gaze toward the far wall, where a framed photo hung, Luna, standing in front of the Aurora logo, smiling proudly. Her hand went to her heart. She whispered, "You did it, my love." The emotion in her voice carried across the room like the sound of a prayer, but the young women didn't recognize reverence when they heard it. They saw only difference. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Sophie sighed. "She's been here almost 15 minutes. Sophie whispered. "You think she's waiting for someone?" Vanessa smirked. "Maybe she's here for a cleaning position. Should I call security?" Emma heard that. Every word. But she didn't turn around. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment and prayed quietly under her breath. "Father, forgive them. They see the gold, but not the grace. Let me be patient, like you are with me." When she opened her eyes, she smiled again. The same smile she'd used through every hardship, the one polished by faith instead of pride. A few minutes later, a young couple entered the store, well-dressed, confident, loud. The saleswomen rushed to greet them immediately, leaving Emma standing alone near the corner. As she waited, she looked toward the private office door, half hidden behind a curtain. The sign read, "Employees only." Behind that door, upstairs, was the heart of Aurora Jewelers, the office where her daughter, Luna, led meetings and watched over her creation. Emma didn't know it yet, but at that very moment, her daughter was sitting at her desk, taking a short break between meetings, and on her monitor, a live security feed played silently, showing the boutique floor below. In the small office above, Luna Williams took a sip of coffee and glanced at the screen. She almost looked away, until something caught her attention. A familiar figure, a posture she knew by heart, a face she hadn't seen in 2 weeks. Her heart stopped. She leaned forward, squinting at the monitor. There was no mistake. It was her mother, Emma. She smiled instinctively, and then froze, because she saw what was happening, the smirks, the whispers, the way the women glanced at her mother like she didn't belong. Luna turned off the sound. She didn't need it. The expressions were enough. For a long moment, she just watched, disbelief turning into something colder. Not anger, but sorrow. Downstairs, Emma approached the counter again, where the 2 employees were busy with the young couple. "Excuse me, dear," she said gently. "Would you mind if I asked something?" Sophie looked annoyed, but smiled politely. "Of course, ma'am. How can I help you?" Emma hesitated, glancing at the jewelry case. "Do you know if Ms. Williams still visits the store often?" Sophie blinked. "You mean our founder, Luna Williams?" Emma nodded. Vanessa answered, a hint of arrogance in her tone. "She's very busy, ma'am. People like her don't have much time to visit anymore." Emma's eyes softened. Ah, I see. That's a shame. She used to have plenty of time for me. Vanessa tilted her head. Oh, you know her? Emma smiled. A little. Sophie chuckled under her breath. Sure you do. Emma didn't reply. She just looked toward the staircase that led upstairs, her heart quietly proud. Up in her office, Luna closed her laptop slowly. She stood, adjusting her blazer, and walked toward the elevator. Her assistant, noticing the expression on her face, asked, "Everything okay, Ms. Williams?" Luna didn't answer right away. She pressed the elevator button and said softly, "Everything will be." As the doors closed, her reflection appeared in the mirrored walls, strong, calm, focused. Her eyes, however, were wet. Downstairs, the atmosphere continued as usual. The couple made their purchase. Vanessa and Sophie wrapped the box with perfect ribbons and plastic smiles. Emma waited patiently, never interrupting. When the couple left, she said kindly, "You both did a fine job serving them. You must be proud of your work." Sophie shrugged. "It's just a job." Emma nodded. "Maybe, but kindness turns jobs into callings." Vanessa frowned. "What does that mean?" Emma smiled. "It means how you treat people is what gives your work meaning." Before either could answer, the chime rang again. The glass doors opened quietly. The air shifted. Luna Williams walked in. Every eye in the room turned. The saleswomen straightened immediately, panic flickering in their faces. "Miss Williams," Vanessa said, forcing a laugh. "We didn't expect you so early." Luna smiled faintly. "Clearly?" Her gaze moved from them to her mother. And in that moment, every sound in the boutique faded. Emma looked at her daughter, pride shining brighter than any jewel in that room. "Hello, sweetheart," she said softly. "I just came to see the store." Luna walked forward slowly, voice steady but trembling underneath. "And I'm glad you did, Mom." Then she turned her eyes toward the staff, calm, composed, but sharp as truth. "Because I needed to see something too." The saleswomen froze. Moments earlier, before Luna stepped into the store, the quiet hum of her office was broken only by the faint buzz of the security monitor. She had watched the boutique countless times before, reviewing how her staff treated customers, how the store flowed, how the brand lived. But today was different. Today, she wasn't watching as a CEO. She was watching as a daughter. Her mother, the woman who prayed her into existence, was standing downstairs, surrounded by mirrors, diamonds, and small mines. Luna leaned forward in her chair, eyes fixed on the screen. At first, she thought maybe she was imagining it. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her. But then Emma tilted her head, that same gentle way she always did when she was curious about something. And Luna knew. Her throat tightened. She turned up the audio slightly and listened. "Affordable," one of the voices said. "Probably lost," said another. Then laughter. "Small, sharp, cruel." Luna pressed pause and closed her eyes. Her chest ached, not from anger, but from something deeper. Disbelief, sadness, the sting of seeing the purest soul she knew being judged by the shallowest people she'd ever hired. She replayed the footage again. Emma's soft smile, the way she admired the jewelry without touching it, the tenderness in her eyes when she whispered her daughter's name under her breath. Luna whispered, "You shouldn't have to walk into a place like that and feel small, Mom. Not after everything." Her assistant, Megan, knocked gently on the open door. "Everything all right, Mrs. Williams?" Luna didn't look up. "She's here." "Who?" "My mother." Megan blinked. "That's wonderful. Should I go welcome her?" Luna shook her head. "No, she's being welcomed enough." Her voice cracked slightly. Megan frowned, then glanced at the screen and understood. "Oh." she whispered. "You want me to—" Luna raised a hand. "No, leave it. I need to see this." She watched a few minutes longer in silence. Emma spoke kindly, smiled when others would have turned bitter, and carried herself with grace that filled the entire store. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just being who she always was. Luna realized something as she watched. Her company had grown, yes. Her brand had spread across cities, but somewhere along the way, some of its spirit, the heart her mother had taught her, had been lost in translation. Aurora Jewelers was born from humility and faith, but now, here it was, turning away humility at the door. That realization hurt more than the disrespect itself. Luna's hands trembled slightly as she took a deep breath. She opened the drawer beside her desk and pulled out a photo. It was old, taken years ago at the opening of her first showroom in San Francisco. She and her mother stood side by side, holding the sign that read, "Aurora Jewelers, founded on faith, built by love." Emma's eyes in that photo were bright, proud, and full of peace. Luna stared at it for a moment, whispering, "You gave me light, and somehow I let it flicker." She placed the photo down carefully, stood, and straightened her jacket. Her reflection in the office window looked composed, but inside, her heart burned with purpose. Not the kind of fire that destroys, the kind that purifies. Before leaving, she said softly, "Megan, I'll be downstairs for a few minutes. Hold my calls." Megan nodded quietly. "Do you want me to follow?" Luna smiled faintly. "No, this one's personal." She walked to the elevator, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. Inside the elevator, she pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored wall, a reflection of success shaped by struggle, a woman who carried both power and pain. She whispered, "Lord, help me handle this with the grace she taught me." Downstairs, through the live feed, the cameras caught the moment she arrived. But before that, she had watched every second. The way her mother asked gently if Luna still visited the store, the way the women dismissed her with polite cruelty, the way Emma smiled anyway. There was something divine about that kind of restraint. As Luna watched, her mother turned toward the glass case where the Founders Collection was displayed. The plaque read, "Inspired by her mother's strength." Luna's throat tightened again. The irony was unbearable. Those words were about Emma, and yet, in that very store, Emma was being mocked. Megan's voice came softly through the intercom. "Miss Williams, the board call with investors starts in 20 minutes. Should I—" "Cancel it," Luna said. "But cancel it," she repeated, calm but firm. There were things more important than money. This was one of them. The elevator hummed softly as it descended. Luna closed her eyes and remembered her mother's voice from years ago. "Humility isn't silence, baby. It's strength under control. When the world tests your heart, answer with grace, not pride." She smiled faintly. Even now, her mother's wisdom was guiding her next move. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The doors opened. She could already hear the faint sound of her mother's voice in the distance. Gentle, kind, familiar. Luna stepped out quietly. From her angle, she could see everything. Emma near the counter, Vanessa and Sophie behind it, exchanging impatient looks. The customers glancing curiously, sensing tension without understanding it. The scene looked ordinary to everyone else, but to Luna, it was sacred. It was a mirror reflecting what her brand had become and what it had forgotten. Emma turned her head slightly and noticed movement near the door. Her eyes softened instantly. She didn't need to see clearly. She knew her daughter's walk anywhere. Her voice, tender and proud, floated across the room. "Hello, sweetheart." Luna stopped mid-step, emotion rising in her chest. "I just came to see the store," Emma said, smiling warmly. Luna's lips trembled. "And I'm glad you did, Mom." Every head turned. The saleswomen froze. The reality of who stood before them began to sink in like slow thunder. Their nervous smiles faltered. Luna walked forward, one calm step at a time. Her heels clicked softly, a metronome marking the rhythm of accountability. Vanessa spoke first, voice shaky. "Ms. Williams, we didn't know she was your—" Luna's gaze silenced her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I'm not angry," she said softly, "just disappointed." Emma placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Don't be too hard on them, dear." Luna looked at her mother, the same woman who once told her to pray before reacting, to forgive before judging. Her mother's calm was contagious. Luna exhaled slowly. "You're right, Mom. They just forgot what kindness looks like." She turned to the staff, her voice steady. "Maybe we all did." The boutique was silent. Even the chandeliers seemed to listen. Luna gestured toward the founder's collection on the wall. "That piece was inspired by my mother. It represents her faith, her patience, her love. It's ironic, isn't it? We sell symbols of virtue, but we forget to live by them." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Sophie looked down, ashamed. Emma smiled gently. "Sweetheart, don't scold them, teach them." Luna nodded slowly. "Then let's start now." And just like that, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't a storm of anger. It was a calm before mercy. Luna turned to her staff once more. "I'll tell you something my mother told me when I was your age," she said quietly. She said, "Never judge someone by the dirt on their shoes until you've walked through the same storm." The words landed with the weight of truth. Vanessa covered her mouth, tears falling. Sophie whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mom." Emma smiled, her voice calm and full of compassion. "I know, dear, we all make mistakes. The blessing is when we learn from them." Luna looked at her mother again, humbled by her peace, and in that moment she knew what to do next. She took her mother's hand and said softly, "Come, Mom, let's sit. They've seen enough." As they walked together to the bench under the chandelier, every employee watched them, not with fear, but with awe, because what they saw wasn't power putting pride in its place. It was love correcting arrogance without breaking it. And that kind of grace doesn't just change people, it saves them. The silence inside Aurora Jewelers was heavy. No one dared to speak. The air felt charged, as if the chandeliers themselves were waiting to see what grace would look like in motion. Luna and her mother sat side by side on the velvet bench beneath the golden light. Emma's hands rested calmly on her lap. Luna's were folded, still trembling with emotion. Across the room, the saleswomen stood near the counter, pale and motionless. No one told them to stay, but they couldn't bring themselves to leave. Luna finally broke the silence. Her voice was steady, not loud, not harsh, but filled with the kind of authority that comes from truth. "Do you know who this woman is?" No one answered. "She's the reason you have this job," Luna said softly. "She's the reason this store exists, and the reason I'm standing here today." She stood slowly, her presence commanding but composed. Every eye followed her as she walked toward her mother. "This woman," Luna continued, "spent her life serving others. She cleaned houses so her daughter could study. She worked through sickness, through loss, through every season, and she never once complained." Emma lowered her eyes humbly, whispering, "Oh, Luna." Luna's voice softened. "She prayed for me when I couldn't pray for myself. She believed in me when no one else did. And everything you see here, every jewel, every light, every dream, was born from those prayers." Vanessa covered her mouth. tears slipping down her cheeks. Sophie whispered, "We didn't know." Luna turned to them gently. "I know you didn't, and that's the problem." She gestured around the room. "This place isn't supposed to be about gold or glamour. Aurora Jewelers was created to remind people that true beauty is born from humility. That's why every piece we sell carries a message of meaning." She paused, her voice lowering. "And yet today, in the very store inspired by her love, you mocked her." Her words weren't sharp, they were sorrowful. They pierced deeper because they were true. Emma reached out and touched her daughter's hand. "Sweetheart, that's enough," she said softly. "Don't carry anger where love can do the work." Luna turned to her mother, her eyes wet. "How do you do that? How do you forgive so easily?" Emma smiled gently. "Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering what God has done for you and passing it on." She stood slowly, turning to the young women behind the counter. Her voice was calm, almost musical. "I know what it's like to be tired, to say things you don't mean, to judge too quickly. I worked in houses where people looked at me the same way you looked at me today. But I also worked for people who loved me like family. They showed me what grace can do when it's lived, not just preached." Vanessa's chin quivered. "We were wrong, so wrong." Emma nodded. "Yes, but wrong can be healed when the heart is willing." Luna watched, astonished, as her mother turned what could have been humiliation into healing. Emma stepped closer to the counter, her kind eyes steady. "I help at a small church not far from here," she said softly. "We meet every Sunday morning. We sing, we pray, and we remind each other that no one is better than anyone else in God's eyes." The room was silent. Then Emma added, "If you ever want to visit, you'd be welcome. No judgment, just grace." The invitation landed like a whisper from heaven. Vanessa nodded through tears. Sophie sobbed openly. "I'd like that," Vanessa said quietly. "I haven't been to church since I was a kid. I stopped believing people could really forgive." Emma smiled gently. "Then maybe it's time to start believing again." Luna's eyes filled with tears. She turned to the small crowd of customers who had gathered near the door, drawn by the unfolding scene. Instead of shooing them away, she walked closer and spoke to everyone. "Maybe it's good that you're all here," she said softly, "because this isn't just about my mother or about these women. It's about all of us." Her voice carried through the boutique, calm, firm, deeply human. "In this world, it's easy to forget where we come from. We chase success, polish our image, and call it progress. But if kindness disappears along the way, it's not success anymore. It's just vanity with better lighting." She glanced toward the Founders Collection. "My mother taught me that real gold doesn't need to prove its worth. It shines quietly, just like love does." The audience was still. Even the music that had played softly in the background seemed to have stopped. Emma turned to Luna, smiling with quiet pride. "You always did have a way with words." Luna smiled back. "You taught me most of them." She looked at her staff again. "No one's losing their job over this," she said. "That's not how we fix hearts." Vanessa looked up in disbelief. "You're not firing us." Luna shook her head. "No, my mother didn't raise me to punish. She raised me to lead." Emma placed her hand on Luna's arm. "And leading starts with loving." Luna nodded. "Exactly." She turned to Vanessa and Sophie once more. "From now on, this store will begin every morning with a reminder, not about sales targets, but about purpose. You'll start each day remembering why Aurora exists, to bring light, to remind people they matter." The women nodded, tears streaming freely now. Emma reached out and took both of their hands in hers. Her touch was warm, steady, maternal. She said softly, "What you said today hurt, but God can use even hurt to heal. I forgive you, not because you asked, but because that's what love does before it's asked." Vanessa sobbed, covering her face. "I don't deserve that." Emma smiled gently. "None of us do. That's why it's called grace." Sophie whispered, "I want to come to your church." Emma nodded. "You'll be welcome. We start at 10. There's coffee, music, and mercy for everyone." Even a few customers smiled through tears. A man near the door whispered, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen happen in a jewelry store." Luna stood back, watching. Her mother had done in minutes what money, strategy, and branding could never do. She had restored the soul of the place, and not with power, but with peace. Emma turned to Luna again, her voice quiet but firm. "You see, dear, sometimes God lets us face little storms to remind us where our shelter really is." Luna's throat tightened. She whispered, "And where is that, Mom?" Emma smiled. "Always in His grace." Minutes later, the crowd began to disperse. Customers wiped their eyes, employees hugged Emma, and the once cold atmosphere now felt warm, alive. Even the chandeliers seemed to shine brighter. Vanessa approached Emma one last time. "I'll see you Sunday?" Emma smiled. "Yes, dear, and maybe you'll bring a friend." "I will," she said softly. "Thank you for not hating me." Emma shook her head. "Hate is heavy, dear. Love travels lighter." Luna placed her arm around her mother's shoulders as they walked toward the exit. Before stepping out, Emma turned back one last time. The plaque near the door caught her eye. It read, "Aurora Jewelers, founded on faith, built by love." She smiled and said quietly, "Looks like that's still true." Luna laughed softly. "Because you're still here to make sure it is." They walked out together into the afternoon sun. The street was busy, but for a moment, the world felt still. Luna looked at her mother, the sunlight glowing in her silver hair, and whispered, "You didn't just build my story, Mom. You built my soul." Emma smiled, eyes glistening. "Then make sure you keep polishing it." They both laughed gently, and behind them, inside the store, two women, once proud, now humble, wiped the counters while humming a song about forgiveness. The story didn't end that afternoon. It only began to breathe. Word of what happened inside the Aurora boutique spread faster than any marketing campaign ever could. No press release, no paid ad, just the sound of goodness traveling mouth to mouth, heart to heart. Customers who were there told friends, friends told family, and soon people weren't coming to the store just for jewelry. They were coming for something far rarer, peace. The following Monday, the atmosphere inside the boutique was different. It wasn't visible at first glance. The shelves were still spotless, the chandeliers still shimmered, but something deeper had shifted. There was softness now, sincerity in the greetings, a warmth that couldn't be faked. When Emma walked through the doors again, she was greeted not with stiff politeness, but with genuine smiles. Vanessa stepped forward first, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," she said, her voice tender. "These are for you." Emma smiled, surprised. "Oh dear, you didn't have to." Vanessa nodded. "I wanted to. I prayed last night for the first time in years. I didn't know what to say, so I just thanked God for sending you here." Emma's eyes filled with quiet tears. She placed a gentle hand on Vanessa's cheek. "Then it was worth every moment, wasn't it?" Sophie came next, holding a small gift box. "I made this for you," she said nervously. Inside was a bracelet, one of the store's pieces, but she had replaced the original inscription. It now read, "Grace wins." Emma gasped softly. "Oh my, it's beautiful." Sophie smiled through tears. "It's true too." Upstairs, Luna watched from her office, heart swelling. She didn't interfere. She wanted to see how Grace worked when left alone. And as she watched her mother hug those women who had once hurt her, she realized that love, truly, was the only thing powerful enough to turn guilt into gratitude. Over the next weeks, Aurora Jewelers became known for something entirely new. Customers would walk in, and instead of being overwhelmed by silence and formality, they were welcomed with conversation, laughter, even prayer. If someone cried while picking out a memorial piece, a hand would reach across the counter, not to sell but to comfort. It was no longer just a jewelry store. It had become a ministry disguised as a boutique, and at the center of it all was Emma. She didn't work there officially, she didn't earn a salary, but she came every week, arranging flowers, greeting visitors, offering hugs that somehow healed. Everyone began calling her Miss Grace. Vanessa and Sophie changed too. Every Sunday morning, they began attending the small church Emma had mentioned. It wasn't fancy, just a modest building on the corner of Maple Street with wooden pews and a hand-painted sign that read, Grace Community Chapel. At first, they came quietly, sitting in the back. But over time, they began to sing, to pray, to cry, and to understand what Emma meant when she said that forgiveness is freedom. After service, Emma would serve coffee and homemade bread to the congregation. She always smiled when she saw them walk in. "Look who made it," she'd say, hugging them, "the real jewels of Aurora." They'd laugh, but they knew she meant it. One Sunday, as the worship team played softly, Pastor Reggie, a kind man with silver hair and a booming laugh, invited Vanessa to share a few words. Her voice shook as she stepped to the small wooden pulpit. "I work in a jewelry store," she began. "But a few weeks ago, I learned that the most valuable thing we can give anyone is kindness." The congregation nodded, murmuring gentle amens. "I judged someone I didn't know," Vanessa continued. "I saw her clothes and missed her crown. I thought she was ordinary, but she was extraordinary, not because of money, but because of love. And when I realized what I'd done, I expected anger. Instead, she invited me here." Her voice broke. "She told me forgiveness isn't something you earn, it's something you're offered. And now I understand. Grace doesn't just forgive, it transforms." The church erupted in applause. Emma wiped her eyes. Luna, sitting quietly beside her, squeezed her hand. "Mom," she whispered, "this is your ministry now." Emma smiled softly. It was always his. Back at the boutique, Luna began implementing changes inspired by that day. She created a new policy called the Heart Standard. Every morning before opening the doors, employees would gather for 5 minutes of reflection. No phones, no tasks, no transactions. Just a question: who will we bless today? Sometimes they'd share encouraging words, sometimes a prayer, sometimes silence, just hearts aligned before work began. And slowly, something incredible happened. Sales went up, not because of strategy, but because of sincerity. Clients returned, drawn to the atmosphere of peace. Investors noticed too, surprised by the surge. But when they asked Luna what caused it, she just smiled and said, "We changed our culture." She didn't explain that the culture was simply Christ-like kindness wrapped in professionalism. They wouldn't have understood, but she did. One afternoon, Luna joined her mother at the store. They sat together behind the counter, sipping tea from porcelain cups. "Mom," Luna said softly, "I've been thinking about expanding, maybe a second flagship in New York." Emma smiled. "That's wonderful, dear. But remember what we said about the sunrise," Luna laughed, "that it always comes when it's time." Emma nodded. "Exactly. Don't chase the sun. Just stay ready when it rises." They both smiled, understanding perfectly what that meant. A week later, Vanessa and Sophie stopped by Emma's home after church. They brought her groceries, flowers, and a small notebook tied with a ribbon. "What's this?" Emma asked. Sophie said shyly, "We started writing down things you say, the little lessons. We thought we'd collect them for others." Emma chuckled. "You're making me sound like an old preacher." Vanessa smiled. You kind of are. Emma laughed again, touched. Then may the Lord bless every word that helps someone see him. They spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and praying together. It was hard to believe that just weeks before, they were strangers, divided by pride and perception. Now they were family. One night, after everyone had left and the boutique was dark, Luna walked through the store alone. She stopped near the Founder's Collection, the necklace inspired by her mother. The light from the street outside reflected on the glass, creating a soft glow that looked almost like dawn. She whispered, "Lord, you really do turn everything for good." Behind her, the faint scent of Emma's perfume lingered. Lavender and faith. She smiled and turned off the lights. Outside, she found her mother waiting by the car. Emma looked up at the night sky. "You see that star, Luna?" she said. Luna followed her gaze. "Yes, that's how grace works," Emma said softly. "It shines brightest when the world's the darkest." Luna smiled. "You always know what to say." Emma laughed quietly. "I just listened to the one who taught me." They stood there in silence for a moment, the city lights flickering like scattered prayers. As weeks turned into months, Aurora Jewelers became more than a brand. It became a story people told, of a humble woman, her daughter, and a moment of mercy that changed lives. Articles called it the day Grace entered Beverly Hills, but for Emma, it was just another day God kept his promise. She continued to help at the church, guide the staff, and remind her daughter that success is safest when held in humble hands. And Luna, now recognized nationally as one of the most influential women in ethical luxury, carried that lesson wherever she went. In interviews, she no longer talked about profit margins or business strategy. She talked about her mother, about forgiveness, about grace, about how sometimes the richest people in the room are the ones who have nothing to prove. One journalist asked her, "Do you ever worry that people will forget the story?" Luna smiled. "No, because grace doesn't need memory. It leaves marks that don't fade." That Sunday, at the little church on Maple Street, Emma stood by the door greeting visitors. Vanessa handed out bulletins. Sophie played the piano. Luna sat quietly in the front row, watching her mother speak with everyone who entered. She realized then that Aurora Jewelers wasn't her mother's greatest creation. Her real masterpiece was the lives she'd touched. Time has a way of softening the edges of even the sharpest memories. What once felt like a wound becomes a window, and through it, light enters. Months turned into years. The story of that afternoon at Aurora Jewelers, the day Grace walked into Beverly Hills, became something of a legend. Not because it went viral or made headlines, but because people told it with tears in their eyes. And every time they did, hearts softened just a little more. Inside the boutique, things were different now. The rhythm had changed. Laughter replaced tension. Warmth replaced vanity. Customers often said, "There's something peaceful about this place," and the staff would smile and answer, "That's because the owner built it on faith." They meant Luna, but Luna always corrected them. "No," she'd say, "it was my mother." Emma still came to the store every week, not to check up, not to advise, just to be. She'd water the plants, rearrange flowers, chat with visitors, and pray quietly before leaving. Sometimes she'd stop near the Founder's Collection and look at the small plaque beneath the necklace that started it all. It read, "Dedicated to Emma Williams, whose heart turned hard work into holiness." She never told anyone that the quote embarrassed her, but she smiled every time she saw it, because she knew it wasn't really about her. It was about the God who had carried her through everything. On Sunday mornings, her little church on Maple Street was always full now. People came from all parts of the city, some curious, some hungry for peace. Emma never preached from the pulpit. She preached through her life. She greeted everyone with a hug, remembered names, listened to stories, and prayed like each person mattered most, because to her they did. Vanessa ran the church's community program now. Sophie played piano every week. And sometimes, during the final song, you could see tears rolling down their cheeks, not from guilt anymore, but from gratitude. Luna often joined them. She would sit quietly in the back, wearing simple clothes, her success invisible. She didn't need to be recognized. She just needed to remember. After service, she and her mother would walk home together, hand in hand. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Silence between them was never empty. It was full of understanding. One Sunday afternoon, as they sat in the garden behind Emma's house, Luna looked at her mother and said, "Mom, have you ever thought about retiring? You've done enough." Emma smiled, eyes half closed under the sun. "People retire from jobs, dear, not from purpose." Luna chuckled. "You're impossible." Emma laughed softly. "And you're proof that impossible doesn't mean anything when God's in charge." They both laughed, the kind of laughter that carries decades of shared prayers. Later that week, Luna was invited to give a speech at a business summit in New York. The theme was Leadership Through Legacy. She stood on a grand stage, surrounded by CEOs, investors, and the glitter of success. But when she began to speak, her voice carried the calm of someone who had seen both sides of life. "My company was born in a kitchen," she said, "not a corporate one. A real kitchen, with chipped tiles and a woman who sang hymns while washing dishes." The audience chuckled gently. Luna smiled. "That woman was my mother. She didn't teach me about profit margins or market trends. She taught me that every business should make the world better, not just richer." She paused, then said, "She also taught me that forgiveness can change an entire room faster than authority ever could." The room fell silent. She told the story, not with drama, not with pride, but with peace. The story of the day her mother was mocked, and how instead of revenge, she offered redemption. When Luna finished, the crowd rose to their feet. It wasn't applause for her. It was awe for the power of something most had forgotten: grace. After the event, a well-dressed woman approached her backstage. "I don't know your mother," she said, voice trembling, "but I think I want to." Luna smiled. "Then you already do. Every time you choose kindness when you could choose pride, you've met her spirit." Back home, Emma listened to the recording of the speech that night. Her eyes glistened, her hands pressed gently together in prayer. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered. She learned. Then she smiled and said softly, "Now teach me how to let go a little." A few months later, Luna announced the launch of a new collection in honor of her mother's upcoming 70th birthday. It was called the Legacy Line. Each piece carried a single engraved word: faith, forgive, family, forever. The proceeds were donated to churches and charities helping single mothers and widows. The campaign slogan was simple: because grace is the only gold that never fades. The line sold out in days, but what touched Emma most wasn't the success. It was a small, handwritten note from her daughter, tucked inside one of the jewelry boxes. It said, "Mom, this collection isn't about jewelry, it's about you. Because you showed me that faith can build empires, and quietly." Emma pressed the note to her heart, whispering, "Everything you gave me, Lord, I gave to her, and you gave it back multiplied." As the years passed, Emma's steps grew slower, her hair whiter, her eyes softer, but her spirit stayed bright. She never complained about the aches or the age. She simply said, "It's just the body reminding me that heaven's getting closer." One autumn afternoon, Luna closed the boutique early and drove her mother to the coast. They stood by the ocean, watching the sun dip into the horizon. The sky glowed with every color of gold and rose. Emma smiled. Looks like the sunrise in reverse. Luna laughed. You mean the sunset? Emma shook her head. No, dear. To me, every ending looks like a beginning from the other side. They stood there quietly, the waves whispering hymns only faith could hear. A year later, Emma went home to be with the Lord, peacefully, gently, as if she had simply closed her eyes between one prayer and the next. The entire community gathered for her memorial, the church, the staff, the customers, even people who had only heard the story. Pastor Reggie said, "She didn't just live faith. She wore it like a crown." Vanessa and Sophie sang her favorite hymn. Luna sat in the front row, tears streaming, her heart full of both pain and pride. When the service ended, she stood and spoke. "My mother taught me that gold loses its shine, buildings crumble, and even fame fades. But love is eternal. It doesn't die, it multiplies." She smiled through her tears. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure her kind of love never goes out of style." That night, back at the boutique, Luna turned off all the lights except one, the spotlight above the Founders Collection. She stood in front of it, whispering softly, "Mom, you still light up this place." Then she turned the sign at the door from open to closed and smiled. "Rest well, Miss Grace. I'll keep the sunrise going." Outside, the city glowed. Inside, peace lingered like perfume. And above the door, the words shone clearer than ever.